What's Happening? Can't forget that show. The first African-American teen sitcom. But what many people don't know is the show What's Happening was based on the movie Coolie High, written by Eric Monte. Now, Eric Monte wrote for the shows All in the Family, Archie Bunker, The Jeffersons. He created the characters George and Wheezy. He wrote and created the show Good Times and the show The Cosby Show. Now, he also created and was a writer for the show What's Happening, but he later ended up suing the producers of What's Happening for $300 million over a number of issues, including not receiving proper credit as a creator of the show. Now, y'all should definitely check out his interview when he was speaking about Norman Lear, the producer of all those shows. Eric Monte did all those shows, but still ended up homeless. That's crazy. Another fact about the show, What's Happening, I remember, hearing about was Dee, played by Danielle Spencer, being in a car accident that killed her stepfather and left her with broken arms and spinal problems and injuries to her face that needed surgery. Rerun, Dwayne, what a show, Raj, played by Ernest Thomas. I think he said he got hooked on drugs during that time. But you know what? Let's get into the story, right? We're going to start off with Mabel King. Now, Mabel King was born December 25th, 1932 in Charleston, South Carolina, but raised in Harlem, New York. Now, she started off singing gospel music, and it wasn't until she was in her mid-30s when she pursued acting. In the late 60s, she played Maria in Porgy and Bess and did the Broadway musical comedy title Hello, Dolly. Her first movie appearance was Don't Play Us Cheap in 1973 as a house guest, directed by Melvin Van Peebles. Esther Rowe from the show Good Times also appeared in that movie also. That same year though, she played the Queen of Merthia in the horror film Ganja and Hess, which was remade by Spike Lee in 2014 as The Sweet Blood of Jesus. But her biggest role came in 1975 when she played Eveline, the evil witch of the West, in the Broadway version of The Wiz. That role as the Wicked Witch of the West earned her a Drama Desk Award nomination for Outstanding Featured Actress in a Musical. Now see, after that, in 1976, Mabel got the role of the mother in What's Happening, which made her one of America's favorite moms at that time. But by the second season, though, of What's Happening, Mabel and the writers of the show couldn't see eye to eye because they wanted her to stay big and overweight, and she didn't like the scripts that they had for her and the other cast members. Now, Mabel wanted to see her character evolve. She wanted her character to go back to school or have a better job instead of just being a maid. She also wanted a two-parent family, which would set a good example and be role models for strong black families instead of her just being a single parent. And plus, she wanted more money. When the producers of the show refused to do that, she quit the show. After that same year, she played the role of Eveline again, but this time for the movie version of The Wiz with Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, Richard Pryor, and others y'all might know. After that, other movies and shows she appeared in were the movie The Jerk as the mother of Steve Martin, Fantasy Island, The Jeffersons, and a few other movies and TV shows. She also got into the politics and was a conservative Republican and speaker for Blacks for Reagan rally, and she campaigned for President Ronald Reagan's re-election in 1984. Now, also around that time, she was diagnosed with diabetes, and by 1986, her toe had to be amputated, and then both her legs and one of her arms. In 1989, she had a stroke, leaving her left side paralyzed, and she was speechless for almost a year. She had to be in a wheelchair, which made it difficult for her because of her size. She also almost died in the early 90s during surgery to have her hip replaced. They say paramedics were carrying her out or something and they had dropped her, and that's why she needed hip surgery. Close friends of hers raised money for her to get a brand new customized wheelchair so she would be comfortable. She later moved to a house in Woodland Hills on Exhibit Court, which belonged to her attorney, but later had to go to Kaiser Foundation Hospital due to dialysis. And on November 9th, 1999, Mabel King died after her kidneys failed. She was cremated and her ashes was given to her attorney. She was 66 years old. R.I.P. Mabel King. Let's get into Shirley Hemphill, who played Shirley Wilson on the show What's Happening. Now, Shirley Hemphill was born July 1st, 1947 in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, see, growing up, she was inspired by the legendary comedian Moms Mabley, who was also from her hometown in Asheville. After high school, she used her athletic scholarship to Morristown College in Tennessee to go and major in physical education. But her goal, though, was just to take care of her mother, and after college, she came back home and got a job in the factory. Now, Shirley was always funny, a class clown in school, and she would work on her comedy routine every day and would test it by entertaining her family and friends. Now, also during that time, right, Flip Wilson was the man, and she was a big fan of his. One day, Shirley's friends dared her to put her comedy act on a demo tape and send it to Flip Wilson to see if he would like her jokes. After sending her demo to Flip Wilson on a crappy tape recorder, he was impressed by her comedy and sent her back a brand new cassette tape recorder, a dozen roses, and an invitation to the show. Now, after visiting Flip Wilson, her mind was made up. She quit her job back home and decided to pursue comedy. Now, once she got to Hollywood, though, she started doing stand-up comedy at the Comedy Store at night, but would wait tables during the day to make some money. Now, see, during that time, when she was coming up, Richard Pryor was one of the hottest comedians out, and she would have to come on right after him, and he was a hard act to follow. Even though no offers from Hollywood came her way at the time, she never gave up, though. She was determined. But her day would finally come when she caught the attention of Joan Murray, who worked under producer Norman Lear for the show Good Times, who offered her a part on the show. Now, after her role on Good Times, right, producer Norman Lear was so impressed that he offered Shirley her own show, a spinoff, but she turned it down and instead took the part of Shirley Wilson on his new sitcom called What's Happening. Once What's Happening aired, people fell in love with Shirley's character on the show. But after What's Happening was canceled the first time after 3 seasons from 1976 to 1979, she was offered to star in her own sitcom again, called One in a Million, which she played a taxi cab driver who inherits a lot of money. But that show ended up being canceled after only 13 episodes, though, because it didn't have the ratings like the show Happy Days and Three Companies during that time. So she went back to doing comedy at nightclubs touring around the world. But in 1985, they brought the show What's Happening back, now titled What's Happening Now, with new cast members like Amory Johnson, who y'all might have seen on Living Color, and Martin Lawrence. That's when he was young. Martin Lawrence was on What's Happening. A lot of people don't know that. But once again, after only 3 seasons, the show was canceled again. Martin Lawrence said after What's Happening ended, he was depressed and broke and didn't know what to do in his career. But Shirley gave him some money to stay on his feet because she believed in him and wanted him to succeed. That's the kind of person she was. Now, Shirley also helped comedian Rosie O'Donnell when she was coming up, making her the opening act to her stand-up comedy shows. Now, Shirley was also one of the first celebrity guests for Oprah Winfrey when she began hosting the AM talk show in Chicago. But later on after that, Shirley did make guest appearances on TV shows like The Love Boat, Trapper John MD. But once again, she returned back to the clubs to do stand-up comedy to make money. Years later, Martin Lawrence returned the favor when he became the megastar and had her on this show. I remember that show. That was a good show too. She was also in the movie CB4 with Chris Rock. She did something with the Wayans brothers and a bunch of other stuff. But on December 10th, 1999, Shirley was found dead at her home after her body was discovered by a gardener who looked through a window and saw her lying on the bedroom floor. An autopsy revealed that she died of kidney failure. She was 52 years old. R.I.P. Shirley Hemphill. Now let's get into the last story. We're going to save the best for last. Fred Berry, better known as Rerun. Now, Fred Berry was born March 19th, 1951 in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, growing up in the housing projects, Fred only dreamed about being on TV and becoming rich. And y'all know Fred loved to dance. And when he was young, his mother used to make him dance for family and friends all the time. Now see, one night, after sneaking away from an all-night prayer meeting, Fred went to the disco club and met a guy named Campbell Lock who showed him how to do the dance called the pop lock. After that, Campbell Lock got Fred on the show Soul Train with him, and their dance style became popular amongst the teens. Now, Fred and Campbell Lock noticed that their dance was becoming popular, and it was a movement, and was giving Soul Train high ratings. So they went to Don Cornelius and asked him could they be paid $50 an episode. But Don Cornelius said no and kicked them off the show. And that's when they formed the group The Lockers. Now, here are the original members of The Lockers. You had Don Campbell Lock Campbell, Tony Mickey Basil. Y'all might know her. She had that song, Hey Mickey. A song called Hey Mickey. It's like a pop song or something. Who else is on there? You have Fred, Mr. Penguin. They call Fred Berry Mr. Penguin. Greg Campbell Lock Jr. Pope. Adolfo Quiones, who y'all might know as Ozone in the movie Breaking. Bill Slim the Robot Williams. Leo Fluky Luke Williamson. Anthony Tony Go-Go Foster. Now calling themselves The Lockers, they started to make appearances on Saturday Night Live. They did something on Dick Van Dyke Show, The Carol Burnett Show, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and then was back on Soul Train, but this time they got paid this time. They even did a Schlitz malt liquor beer commercial during that time. But in mid-1976, Tony Basil and Campbell Lock left The Lockers. So Fred was like, he was going to try a whole different career path, and he heard about a TV show that was holding auditions called What's Happening. Even though he never acted a day in his life, he went down there and tried out. Now see, the original script for the character Rerun was written for a skinny white kid. But when Fred auditioned, they liked him so much that they rewrote the role for him, giving him the name Freddie Rerun Stubbs. The show was an instant hit, and Rerun became everybody's favorite on the show, with his trademark red beret hat and suspenders, making him a household name. Now, with the success of What's Happening, believe it or not, right, Fred started getting tired of the fat jokes and turned to alcohol, drugs, and started partying heavy. They say on the set, drug dealers would be right there in the studio with marijuana and cocaine for him. Realizing he was the star of the show, Fred asked for more money after he found out that the white actors on the show was getting more money than him and the other black actors. I think they was paying the black actors $5,000 and it was paying the white actors $8,000. Fred also called them racist, and they also wanted better dressing rooms, which they say wasn't clean and sanitized. Now, after having a meeting, the higher-ups of the show decided to cancel the show because they didn't want to pay them, and they felt that Fred was the instigator, convincing cast members to join him in the strike for more money. Now out of work, Fred said he blew $1 million on drugs, cars, homes, Learjets, a bunch of other stuff. Now with no acting job, and he probably was blackballed at the time, Fred got depressed and tried to commit suicide 3 times. But in 1985, the network decided to give What's Happening another chance, and they changed the name to What's Happening Now, thanks to the success of The Cosby Show. But after the first season, Fred quit over money and contract disputes, and that's when they brought in a young Martin Lawrence. Now see, one of the producers of the show at the time said if Fred would have stayed, Rerun and Dwayne was about to get their own spinoff show. But you know, things happen. After that, Fred, he wanted to clean his act up. So he went to rehab and got off drugs. He was ready to change his life. So to make money, he started doing shopping mall appearances. He became a motivational speaker and a minister in Alabama. He lost over 100 pounds after being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And he even legally changed his middle name to Rerun. Fred later appeared in Snoop Dogg's videos. He was on the Martin Show, the Varnell Hill episode. and a bunch of other movies and TV shows. He also toured with the Universal Circus as Rerun. But on October 21st, 2003, Fred Berry died at his Los Angeles home of natural causes, they say now. Now, the county coroner was investigating, but his friend said Fred had been sick for a while because of a recent stroke and he had diabetes. Now, Ernest Thomas, who played Raj, said certain people was upset with him for going to his funeral because they felt like it was Fred's fault that their career ended. But see, Fred Berry's widow, Essie Berry, who's an Atlanta-based civil rights activist, thinks foul play was involved in his death. In an interview, she said Fred was murdered to keep him from getting his $5 million share of a $20 million scheme put together by business partners. She claimed after Fred appeared on the game show The Weakest Link in November 2001, the contestants had to set up a corporation for their winnings, and she believes Fred allowed his federal tax number to be used to establish a dummy company that was taking a $20 million loan against his name and likeness. Essie Berry thinks someone poisoned Fred so they wouldn't have to pay him. Now, you can check out Essie Berry's YouTube channel to find more information about the story. Check her out, Essie Berry. That's Fred Berry's widow. Now, before Fred passed, he was the father of 3 and had been married 6 times, although on 2 of those occasions he remarried an ex. He was 52 years old. R.I.P. Fred Rerun Berry.